Recovered alcoholic. My name is Pat Rogan. Oh boy. And thanks to the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous outlined in this big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is the program of AA, I have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. I can't even express to you how grateful I am for this program. AA didn't just save my life, but it gave me a new life. It's a life worth living. If you're new here, you just have no idea what's in store for you. Just an incredible way of life. I didn't believe it when I got here either. If you're new, I just out of blind faith. The book gives us a couple choices. It says we can die an alcoholic addict death, or we can accept spiritual help. Or we can go on to the bitter end, blotting out our intolerable situation, or we can accept spiritual help. I looked at those two doors, and I contemplated them for a while. Only we would do that. Let's see, die an alcoholic death or accept spiritual help. It's a tough decision. And I with blind faith, just decided to accept your help. And I wasn't even going to say spiritual. I'll accept your help. I'll just blindly do what you ask me to do. And God showed up in my life. And I couldn't help, I was sitting with Mark back there, and I couldn't help but think of where we were last Thursday, sitting in Dr. Bob's kitchen, having a cup of coffee in Akron. And that's just, I'm just overwhelmed with this trip that we just took, going into the living room, surrendering upstairs in Sue's bedroom, where they used to take guys and gals upstairs and get them on their knees and get them to surrender before they were allowed to come to the meeting downstairs, where they'd stuff 70 freaking people in the living room down there. And it's not big. It's not big. And we actually had the honor before we left, the 12 of us, to have our own private meeting in Dr. Bob's living room where the original meetings were taking place. It's just incredible what we got to do. The Cyberling Estate and Group 1, and just, I could go on and on with that. Just a trip of a lifetime, It was one of my bucket list things. So where are we? So we're at we've laid the foundation of this program. The last however many weeks I've been here, I've lost track. The book asks us, when we get to this, once we've completed our fifth step, it refers to this foundation. These first 5 steps were the foundation of this whole program. These are the 5 that you got to do thoroughly. This is, we just read about the unfortunates. There are unfortunates. The unfortunates. Who are the unfortunates? They're the ones that are incapable of being honest with themselves. Those are the ones that lie on their 4th and 5th step. The ones that refuse to change. The ones that refuse to see the truth. That's what this when we get to this 5th step, after this 5th step, between 5 and 6, they're asking us, are we convinced that we're alcoholic? Are we convinced that I cannot drink safely? The 2 questions. When I really honestly want to stay stopped, I cannot. And once I start, I can't control the amount I take. Am I one of them? Am I suffering from the obsession and the compulsion? And all the other stuff, yes, the dash means my life's unmanageable. Yeah. By the way, my life's unmanageable with or without the drink. Matter of fact, I managed it better when I was drinking until I couldn't. It was fine. The truth is, I wouldn't be here if it still worked. If alcohol still fixed what was going on with me internally, I would not be here. I would be still suffering those same consequences. The problem is it stopped working. It stopped treating the spiritual malady. It stopped treating that internal condition, that restlessness, that irritability, that discontent. And Clapton calls it torment. I was tormented. I was a tormented child. I was tormented up till the time I got halfway through a bottle of Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill, and then life changed, and then a 20-year run, and then it didn't work anymore. And here I am, and it just, that we need to be convinced of. That's a requirement. That's a requirement. Not a requirement for membership, by the way, but a requirement for a spiritual awakening, a requirement for a personality change sufficient to recover, a requirement for the spiritual experience that we talk about in this program. You've got to surrender. And the surrender, part of the surrender is that we admit that no human power is going to solve the problem. There's no guy, no girl, no job, no child. I lost custody of my son over a drink. I traded my son for a drink. There was obvious to me, there was no human power out there that was going to keep me stopped. I didn't love anybody more on this planet than my two boys. But nobody tells me what to do. I'm a grown-ass man, you know. Who the hell do you think you are? And somehow, some way, I convinced myself that it's going to be okay. It's going to be different. Or I'm not going to say it. F it. Anybody been there? F it. Right? F it. There's a paragraph, my favorite. I say this probably every week in More About Alcoholism. What about when we deliberately go out and get drunk and we know what the consequences are? We know we're going to lose our job. We know we're going to lose the child. We know our marriage is over if we drink again. F it. Because I'm living one moment at a time. Right? I just need relief now. I'll worry about the price tomorrow. But right now, I need relief. I can't stand the way I feel for one more freaking second. Those two steps that Bill added later, by the way, and we'll talk about two that he added also. The third step was the surrender step at Dr. Bob's house up in Sue's bedroom. You know? But Bill realized there's a couple steps you got to admit before you get there. And those are two of them. And then we make a decision to seek that power. A little more to it than that. This is where they tell us what's really wrong with us in step 3. Right? Here's what's really wrong with you. You're selfish, you're self-centered, you're driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, and self-pity. And you step on the toes of everybody around you, and they retaliate. And you blame them. What's the next line? Everybody knows it now, right? But we usually don't think so. We are extreme examples of self-will run riot, but we don't think so. No, I'm not. Really. Well, then why don't you do a 4-step and see if that's true? You don't think you're selfish and self-centered? You don't think you're driven by fear? You don't think you're deluded? You don't think you're suffering from self-pity? Well, do a 4-step and see if they're right. You know what? If they're wrong, go on your merry way. You know? That's what 4 and 5 is about, are they right? Are they right? Is it really the misuse of your instinctual drives that's the problem? Is it really true that you'll do anything for attention, you'll do anything for money and material, you'll do anything for a relationship? Is that true? That you'll lie, violate principles, mine and yours, whatever it takes. I found out, yeah, it's true. It's true. You know, we take their inventory and then we do that turnaround and we go, all right, what did I do here? What tools was I using to satisfy those instincts? Well, they look like dishonesty and inconsideration and selfishness and fear. That's what mine looked like. That's what it looked like. This is what I'm running on. Those are the tools I'm using to satisfy my instinctual drives. My God-given drive, by the way, good. God-given instinctual drives that are good if they're used properly. But I suffer from this disease called more. More. I need more. And I'll do anything, say anything, buy anything, be anybody you want me to be to get you to like and accept me. And I'll go to any length to get the right car for you to like and accept me. I'll go to any length to get the right position at work for you to like and accept me. I'll go to any length to get you to sleep with me. I'll be whoever you want me to be. I'll buy whatever you want me to buy. Because that was the end game. That was always the end game. And then we confess it. We see, yep, they're right. They're right. And then we confess it. Confession, and we don't need to know why this works. It just works. You know what I mean? I don't know why that's different. I don't know why taking it out of my head and putting it on paper, it's different. I'm not sure why when I look at it in black and white, it means something different than when it was in my head. That I see a different truth when that happens. I don't know why when I confess something to you that I get free. Confession frees the confessor. I don't know how that works. I don't care how it works. I just know that it does. I didn't have any choice but to try it. And I shared with you guys the last time I was here that I had my first major spiritual experience as a result of my fifth step. I did mine with a priest because I don't trust you guys. I didn't trust my sponsor. That's a shame, but that's just who I am. I didn't trust my parents. I don't trust my siblings. You think I'm going to trust you? Oh, no. I used that as an excuse not to do it for a while until those crotchety old men that I was a member of the home group got on me, and kept saying, when are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? And so I did mine with a priest, and I left that office a new person, a different person. It was dark to light. It was death to life. It was a Lazarus moment. I mean, the whole world, a whole different world came into view. I was free for the first time in my life. I was free without a substance in my body. You know what that feels like? It was like that third drink feeling. I was going to say one line, but that's a lie. That first gram feeling. That first hit. You know what I'm saying? I was the first time ever I was at peace without a substance in my body. I want to stay there. I wanted to stay there. This program gives me a way to get back there. I have a hard time staying there, but it gives me opportunities to get back there. When I get out of there, I know how to get back. And then it says, if we're convinced of those first 5 proposals, if we're convinced of those first 5 steps, then we're ready to move on to 6 and 7. The tools have changed. If nothing changes, nothing's going to change. I've recognized the behavior. I've seen the nature of my wrongs. I've seen my defects of character. If I don't change them, if I don't change my behavior, which is the problem, it's not alcohol and drugs, it's my behavior. If I don't eliminate the conflict in my life, I am going to drink again. I don't know any other way to fix that. I don't know. I've tried every other way. I've tried spending money. I've tried buying cars. I've tried sex. I've tried porn sites. Sorry, guys, didn't mean to bring that up, but I wasn't the only one on it. It's a $50 billion industry. None of it works like a drink. None of it works like a drink. I'm the pure alcoholic, man. I like that other stuff, but man, I could just drink. Just give me a couple drinks, I'll be fine. Problem is, it's never a couple. That's the problem. So something's got to change. These are 2 of the steps that Bill added. Bill added 1 and 2. We were talking, what he mentions the Oxford Group tenets of surrender, inventory, confession, restitution, helpfulness to others, and a belief in the dependence upon God, right? He adds 1 and 2 that he gets from William James. He adds an 8th step, a get ready to go make amends. He adds a 10th step, a spot check inventory. And then he puts 6 and 7 right in the middle. Right in the middle. I really believe, and this is just the way I see it, that everything leads there and everything leads back there. Everything has led up to 6 and 7. Everything has led up to these defects of character. Everything has led up to me violating principles. Spiritual principles, or the principles behind these steps. I don't care how you look at it. These steps are a set of principles. I don't know who made up those ones that go with each step. I don't know. I don't remember where that comes from, some talk. But the steps are principles. Inventory, confess it, change, make restitution where necessary, and then live this way of life. These steps guide me to a set of principles. And it sounds simple. It sounds really simple. All we got to do is what? Stop lying. Stop cheating. Do the right thing. Instead of being dishonest, be honest. Instead of being inconsiderate, be considerate. Instead of running on fear and making every decision based on fear, how about courage? How about dependence upon God? How about trust God? Sounds simple, don't it? Mm-hmm. Boy, I wish it was that easy. Yeah. I think there's a couple of reasons why, and this is just my opinion once again, I think there's a couple of reasons why the most important steps, in my opinion, in this program are 2 of the shortest steps in the book. Because Bill knows this is a lifetime project. He knows this is not something you're going to wish away. But these are the tools of change. It's that willingness, being willing to let go of them. And then asking God for help. Asking God for help. The other reason why I think they're the shortest steps in the book is because steps 10 and 11 is all about reeling 6 and 7 in. Isn't it? I mean, step 10 is a spot check inventory. All day long spot check inventory. According to the big book, spot check all day long inventory. And then what? We go home at night, we go, how well did I do? Did I violate any principles today? Was I dishonest today? Was I inconsiderate today? What decision did I make based on fear? And we'll get to those steps. But I think that everything led up to this. And then everything is going to lead back there. We're going to go out, we're going to treat some other spiritual sickness that we have in 8 and 9. But then 10 and 11 is all about reeling those instincts in on a moment-to-moment basis. Without those steps, nothing changes. I'm building another 4th step. I'm building another 5th step. That's what I'm doing if I don't change. If I don't change my behavior, I'm doing another inventory in a couple of weeks. You know? And look, I'm all about inventory. Look, we're going to be doing inventory the rest of our lives. You can call it whatever you want. I mean, the 12 and 12 confuses us a little because they throw all the inventories into step 10. You know, so a lot of people call that a nightly inventory. Who cares? You know, I don't care. You know, the big book shows the daily spot check inventory in 10 and the nightly inventory in 11. But they combine them all, you know. I've done handful of 4th and 5th steps. You know, I'll put one name down whenever I need to do it and do a 5-column inventory on it. Like if it's just one person, I'll do it one person. That's the beauty, by the way, of taking people through the steps. I take a lot of people through the steps. I do workshops where we take people through the steps in 5 weeks. Mm-hmm. And so every time they do a 4th step, it motivates me to do one. Now I have to look at myself because I got my guys doing another 4th step, and I look at it and go, what do I got going on? And I get to put a name down on that sheet or a name or two down on that sheet and get current again. It's about staying current, right? It's about staying in the sunlight. How do I stay in the sunlight? But I got to recognize it and own it first. And that's what 6 and 7 is. And what does that Dowling say, Reverend Dowling? This is the step that separates the men from the boys, right? Right? The women from the girls. Right? I like to say the adults from the children. This is the step that separates the adults from the children. This is the steps that separate the people who really want it from the people who are the unfortunates, the half measures. The half measures. And I'm not a person who believes that half measures avail you nothing. I don't believe that at all. I see it. I've been around here for a few decades. I see half measures availing dry, miserably dry, but dry. I see people ripping people off on phones. I see people selling shit that ain't real. I mean, I could go on. There's people out there doing stuff that look, there's some deception in all sales. I get that. You know, I get that. But how far do you want to go before you're violating principles? How far can you go before it becomes sin? How far do you go when it becomes in violation of spiritual principles? I mean, I was in retail sales. We were bait and switching people all day long. You know, that was the day. You advertise something. You don't want to sell that. You want to sell this. You know, so you take them from something that's just as good to something you make money on. That's just the way it is. Is that a half measure? Are you saying? I'm just saying you get to draw that line. You get to do that. We get to do that. God within gets to do that. I was listening to Bishop Aaron's and Dion's talk. That was so cool. And Bishop Aaron says, we are all haunted by God, whether we know it or not. Right? We are all haunted by God, whether we know it or not. When that gut tells you that was wrong, guess what? It was wrong. To you. To you. I don't judge you. You get to judge yourself. The God within gets to judge yourself. Ben called it the soul, the part of you that knows that it knows that it knows. That part. Nobody had to tell. Nobody gets to tell us from right from wrong. We get to do that. Unless you're a sociopath. Then you get away with whatever you want. But you know, I hear Pete say it all the time, and I've heard other guys say it. How free do you want to be? How free do you want? How well do you want to get? That's to the degree that you stop lying, cheating, stealing, and being this fake self. Reverend Dave over at CBG at First Baptist, wherever he's at now, he used to always say that we create this fake self, this fake person that we want everybody to see in life. It's not who we are, but it's what we want you to think we are. And we promote that image. But it's all, we're back to these instinctual drives again. Back to these, and I wish I could tell you, and I'm going to tell you something, when things are going good, I'm right on the beam, man. You know, when things are going my way, right? When everybody's liking me, my finances are good, and business is going the way I want it to go, and my relationship is, you know, right on the beam there, man, I'm good. But as soon as things start to slide a little bit, as soon as something attacks my integrity, as soon as somebody attacks my self-esteem, my self-worth, my pocketbook, or my relationship, that fake self comes out again. That other self comes out. I have so many stories. One of my favorites is the stove story, right? I mean, I'm sober. I'm not newly sober. I've got a decade of sobriety under my belt, you know. I'm recovered Pat, you know. And I walk into this customer's house to do this job, and she starts telling me how to do the job. And I say, look, I'm the best at what I do. There's nobody better at what I do than me. So if you just back away and let me do this job. Now, she just had the stove delivered. And I tap the wood where the microwave is going to go, and this piece of wood falls down and dents the top of the stove. Okay? And I look around. Nobody saw it. So I put my drop cloth over it. And I think, how in the hell am I going to get out of this house without somebody noticing that I dented that stove? Right? So I take my fingers, and I'm trying, and it's metal, right? And I'm trying to, I don't know, use some kind of psychic powers to get this dent out of this stove. Because I used to move stuff back in the 70s with my mind. Mm-hmm. There was something that started with an L involved, you know. And I'm thinking, I got Yoda on one shoulder saying, you need to tell her, and I got Vader saying, F it, you know, just get out of there, you know. And I got this spiritual warfare going on in my head right there. And I'm thinking about leaving. And I decide, you know what? I'm going to do the right thing. I say, ma'am, I dented your stove. And she said, yeah, I saw it. And I said, can I fix it? She said, yeah, just get the part. Just replace the back control panel. I said, all right. They shipped the wrong control panel 3 times. Right? Now the husband calls me, and he used some F-bombs. And the short version is either you get me another stove, or I'm calling the dealer that you work for, and I'm telling him what happened. And I said, no problem. Now the stove's about $500. Now, 2 things are affected, right? My self-esteem's affected because I'm no longer the best at what I do. And my pocketbook is affected because now I got to come up with $500. I just don't trust the process. What the hell is wrong with me? Why don't I just trust the process? Why am I willing to sacrifice my reputation? Why am I willing to sacrifice my recovery for $500? Why would I do that? If somebody asked me when I got here, give us 500 and you're going to recover, I'd have given you 1,000. I'd have given you everything I have. But I'm willing to risk it. So let me tell you what happens. I go back to the dealer I work for, and I tell him what happened, and they go, Pat, it's on us. You have been with us for what, 25 years now? You have bailed us out more times than I can count. You have done stuff for us for nothing over and over again just to help us out. This is on us. Just bring it back. We'll sell it at the clearance center. No problem. I don't trust the process. Don't trust the process. I'm leaving our house to go speak. And I take out Shannon's daughter's car, the whole side of her car, or Cadillac. Right? I'm backing out, boom. I don't go in the house. You know what I do? I open up the garage, I get a plunger. right? I'm out there with a plunger trying to get the freaking dent out of the door, right? And then I think, you know what? I got to get the paint off of this thing. So I get some rubbing compound. This is a spiritual pet here, you know. I get the paint off the car and I left. I'm on my way to Alcoholics Anonymous to speak on spiritual principles, for God's sake. You know? Got the warfare going on there. She'll think she did it in a parking lot somewhere. I was about halfway there. I called Shannon. I said, I just wrecked your daughter's car. I got to go. You know? But it's just my instinct. No, what it is with this disease of more, where no matter how good it is, there has to be more. Why everything seems to lose its shine, I have no idea. Clancy used to say that all the time. Just everything gets old. No matter how nice your car is, it gets old. You know, it just doesn't seem to want a better one. You know? I never did tell the tempo story, did I? I bought this. I figured, you know what? I figured if I get a new car, I'll get a girl. You know, I need a car so I can get the girl, right? So I go up to Wallace Ford in Delray when they were at, I don't know who it is now. I think Auto Nation owns them now. And I start to walk in there, and I think the two salesmen said, you know that car that we can't get rid of on the back lot? This guy's driving out with it tonight, right? And I drove out with a fully loaded Ford Tempo. Yeah. Fully loaded. Fully loaded. I was in my glory. I got power windows. I got power seats. You know, the mirrors, four-way stereo. I'm blasting the radio, windows down. I can't wait to show my buddy. I get there. Mitch looks at it and says, "Who the F buys a fully loaded Ford Tempo?" You know, that's an old man's car. I liked that car for 20 minutes from Delray to North Lauderdale. Right? I got rid of it. Got a 4Runner. Manly car. I got a big old Tundra now. Buy that sissy car. Guys taught me a lesson. But it's all about what you think of me, right? Not what's practical, not what's right, not what's principle-based. It's what you think of me. That's a tough thing to let go of, man. That's a tough thing to let go of. Bill tells that story. I love The Forgotten Mountain. It's on page 100 at Bill Sees It. One of my favorite lines. And we got to go to East Dorset at the Wilson House a few years back. And Bill was raised next door at the Griffith House. And we go upstairs from the library and you can look out with a window where Bill slept. And he at that time could see Mount Aeolus. And now you see trees. Yeah. But he used to say, I used to stare out that window and I just couldn't wait to climb that mountain. Like what a joy it would be to accomplish climbing that mountain and then getting to the top and looking down and seeing East Dorset, you know. He said, and then my aunt brought a plate of fudge for my 13th birthday, and I forgot all about the mountain, and I chased that fudge for the next 20 years, right? And that's exactly what happened. I wanted to be a pro baseball player. I played high school ball. I wanted to play baseball. And that was my dream. I'm going to be a ball player. I'm going to be a second baseman, man, for the Pittsburgh Pirates. That's who I'm going to be. That was my dream. And then my senior year, while I'm playing on the senior boat baseball team, I find Boone's Farm, Strawberry Hill. And I forgot completely about the baseball and chased that fudge for the next 20 years. It was a 20-year run. I don't know anything about becoming an alcoholic. I don't know what that is all about. I think the line I crossed was my lips, you know. I think as soon as you put a drink in me, I became alcoholic, and I ran for 20 years. I don't. Why would you control drink? Why would you do that? What's the sense in that? What's the sense in 2 beers? I don't get it. And do you like the taste? No, you don't. No. Kenny Kane. I always like to tell Kenny Kane's story, right? Kenny Kane was a riot. Kenny Kane was doing a step series for us at the Bottom Line Group when we opened it. And he was doing a step, I think it was 6 or 7, one of those. And he says this, and during his talk, I'm listening to his talk, and he says, when I came into AA, they told me I had to shoplift less. And I went, oh my God, we got a thief. doing a step series in our home group here. We need a group conscience. We got to get together. I'm emergency group. We got to get rid of this guy. Right? At that time, I think he had 17 years or something like that. Right? Who the hell is this guy? Man, it took me a while, but didn't Kenny nail it? Didn't he nail it? Right? Lie less. Shoplift less. Right? I'd like to say cheat less, but that's not a good one. Be less inconsiderate. Be less dishonest. Be less selfish. Practice the opposite of the defective character. And then eventually those muscles will get strong. And the selfish, self-centered, dishonest muscles will atrophy. See, when I get here, those selfish, dishonest, fear-based, inconsiderate muscles are strong. The opposite of that is atrophy. And now it's changed. Now my natural state is to be honest, is to try to be considerate. Do I do that perfect? No. Let me tell you, one of my favorite paragraphs in how it works is near the end of the chapter where Bill says, suppose we fall short of the chosen idea and stumble, are we going to drink? Not always. Bless you. Not always. Because Bill recognizes, thank you, Bill, for recognizes that we're broken as he knew he was. We're all broken. The human condition's a broken condition. It's an imperfect condition, and we are going to fall short. There is no perfection here. It's progress towards it, but never going to get there. So are we going to drink? Not always. What he's saying is if we recognize it and we ask God to change us, we ask God for help, ask him to take us to something better, then we are surely not going to drink. But if we continue that behavior, we continue to hurt others, we continue the dishonesty, the inconsideration, the fear, we continue down that road, we are going to drink. He says this is a fact out of our experience. Or let me tell you something. You're going to walk around here hanging in there. How you doing? Hanging in there. 3 meetings today, called my sponsor 4 times. I'm hanging in there. I got another couple hours. I'm going to have another 24. Just getting through the day. And hey, let me tell you something. If you're new here, it's just about getting through the day. But you know what? I don't live like that anymore. I don't have to live like that anymore. Some days, this is the only thing that makes any sense to me. But I know where that booze is taking me. I know where that road's going. There's no mystery there for me. There's no thought in my mind that it's going to be different. I've experimented too many times with that. I know the truth today. And the truth is, I need somehow to follow spiritual principles in my life to the best of my ability. He also Bill later talks about the mountain where he eventually climbs the mountain, and metaphorically, he eventually climbs the mountain and struggles one step at a time, sometimes falling back 3 feet, sometimes crawling 6 feet. He said, struggling to get to the top of that mountain. And he says, don't forget during that struggle to stop, turn around, and see how far you've come. Right? As much as you're struggling, you're not where you were. Just the fact that you're at this meeting, you're not where you were. You're not in a trap house. You're not in a bar somewhere trying to get drunk. You've come a ways. And I'm grateful that I'm not where I was. I'm not where I want to be. I got a long way to go. But my God, I've come a long way. I'm nowhere near that selfish, self-centered, fear-driven, full of self-pity individual that walked into these rooms. I have principles in my life today. I am considerate in my life today. Not every decision I make is based on fear anymore. The funny part about 6 and 7, the funny part about life is the road narrows, doesn't it? Like what was acceptable when I got it and what's acceptable to me today is a whole different deal. There were behaviors that I had when I got here that people looked down on. And I was okay with it. It was a victimless crime. Nobody's getting hurt but me. And I'm all right with it. But at some point, I started to offend myself. And I think that's when the willingness to change comes, right? When we're offended by our own behavior. Forget about anybody else. But when I do something and I go, damn it. Why did I do that? That was so wrong. How do I make that right? I see these two steps as being 1 and 2 on character defects. That's just the way I see it. I am absolutely powerless over alcohol and other mind-altering substances. And the only thing that can help me or save me is God. And by the way, God works through you. God works through these meetings. God works when I drop to my knees and I pray. God works anytime I pray. I'm one of them guys that prays all day long. I bring God into everything I do. Just makes things so much easier. I don't know if that changes things or not, but I know that things change when I pray. I don't know how that all works. But I walk into a church, I feel God. Any church. It doesn't have to just be my church or our church. Any church. Walk into any meeting, I feel the presence of God. I don't care what A it is. I walk into any of those A's, I feel the presence. You bring it. You bring it here. So I am absolutely convinced that I am powerless over alcohol and drugs, and only God can save me. I am absolutely convinced that I am powerless over my instinctual drives, that I am powerless over my defects of character, and only God can change that. Only with God's help can that be changed. I'm as powerless over those instincts as I am over alcohol and drugs. I'm just naturally selfish, I think. I'm just naturally fear-based. Still today, I wish I could tell you that's different. I wish I could tell you I didn't suffer from fear. I wish I could tell you that I don't have a panic attack when I'm on my way over here. Internally. I wish I could say that was removed, but it's not. But you know what it does do? It makes me pray. It brings me to God. The thorn in the flesh is one of my favorite talks ever. The things that bring me to God. Sometimes pain brings me to God. Sometimes it's the only thing that motivates me to go to God. And when I say God, whatever you think that is, that's what I'm talking about. That's the beauty of this program. You get to choose your conception of God. That is the beauty of it. I'm not speaking of anything specific. To you, privately, I could speak to something specific. But you get to choose that for yourself. I love when the 12 and 12 talks about without spiritual success, there will never be personal, material, and relational success. That with us, with me, spiritual success must precede all other personal success, emotional success, or sexual, relational. Because if I don't bring spiritual principles into all of those relationships, I'm going to blow them up. That's just my nature. I got to bring God into every aspect of my life. I was thinking on the way over here, one of my biggest fears, I have to read that, but one of my biggest fears is that I'm going to get up to this podium and freeze. That I think is where the panic attack comes from, So I have the 3 talks. I have the talk I'm going to have, and then the talk I actually have, and then the one I should have had when I'm on my way home. The stuff I forgot to say. And there was this meeting was the only meeting that I ever froze in and had nothing to say. I had like 15 minutes left to talk. And one of the people that I admire, I'm not going to say it was Father Kelly. And I have never seen, I always wondered, why would somebody want to be a priest? Like, that's just so abnormal to me. Like, why would you never want to get laid, for God's sake? You don't want a nice car, a nice house. I mean, what would provoke someone to give up the material and the relational for that calling? Until I met Father Kelly. And I saw this man is so passionate. This man has a relationship with his God that is off the freaking charts. He needs nothing. The bishop talks about not being in that race anymore, not fighting for the relationships, not fighting for the money, not fighting for the success. He's out of the game. Father Kelly's out of the game. Father Kelly never wrote anything. His homilies came right from the heart, and he'd close his eyes and he'd look up and then boom, he would just put it out there. And I went, man, that's amazing how he channels the relationship he has with his God is just off the charts. And I want that. And I froze. Truth is, I do not. No, I don't. Because I'm not willing to give up what he gave up to get that. You see what I'm saying? He put aside the material. He put aside the attention, the validation. He put aside his relationships. He put aside the sex instinct for that freedom. That's amazing. That's amazing. I'm not capable of that. I am not capable of that. I'm still driven by those instincts. That's freedom. That's freedom right there. To not be in that competition anymore. Crazy. But the cool thing is, God loves me anyway. This broken guy that I am, God loves me anyway. You know why I know that? Because he loves Paul. That's why I know that. Because Paul was my favorite guy in that bigger book. This is a terrorist. A terrorist was killing Christians, this guy. And God knocks him off his horse and blinds his ass to get his attention. Right? And he never recants that experience. He spends most of his life in prison writing about 2/3 of that bigger book. And all he had to do was recant that experience and he could have been free. And he knew it was real. He wasn't giving that up for nothing. I'm not giving up this for nothing. I'm not giving up what I got for nothing. And if God could love Paul, as broken as he is, one of my favorites, right? What I should do, I do not. And what I should not do, I do. That's Paul. Writing in a bigger book. You know what else he says? Successful living comes from daily dying. So my goal is to kill off a little of that old self a little bit each day and become this new self, to become reborn each and every day. That's my goal. That's what the nightly inventory for me is all about. Where did I fall short today? And where do I need to ask God for help? What do I need to change in my behavior today? And ask God to help me change that. And little by little, I'm going to get closer, right? It's about getting closer. I'm never going to be perfect. I'm never going to arrive. But I'm going to get closer and further away from that person I was when I walked in. That's my goal. That's what I want. You know how much peace is attached to that? I can't describe it. It's like me trying to describe a spiritual experience to you. I can't. You have to experience it. It's real to me. I've had it. And I've had a few since then. The bishop calls them epiphanies. I've had many epiphanies. But that's it. I just want to kill off that old self a little bit each day. Shoot for perfection. Not going to get there. Bill talked about shooting that arrow towards perfection and heading that way. And we'll just become better people along the way. Admit my defects of character. And ask God. What do you say? Humbly ask God. So we recognize them, and then with humility, step 7 says, with humility as our God. What's that mean? Well, I know exactly who the hell I am now. I know exactly who and what I am now. After that 4th and 5th step, I know exactly who, and I own it, and I'm willing to let it go. And with humility, knowing exactly who and what I am with my guide, I can ask God to take me to better things. With humility as my guide, I ask God to guide my behavior for the rest of my life. To me, that 6 to 7 is that simple. It's just a lifetime journey. It's just a lifetime process. Well, good call. I'm going to end with something. 2 things. One of my readings that I do every day is a guy named Nicky Gumbel. And this is one of the readings that I like to read because it's about fear, right? At one level, fear is healthy. Fear is an emotion included by a perceived threat. It's a natural human emotion. It's God-given. It's a basic survival mechanism. It keeps us alive. It protects us from danger. However, there's also a thing as unhealthy fear. The Greeks use the word phobos, which means phobia. This is an unhealthy fear. It's disproportionately to the danger posed. It's an exaggerated danger. Anybody recognize that? Anybody like get up in the morning and go, shit, this day's going to suck, right? We haven't even had coffee. We haven't even left the bedroom yet, right? Sorry. It's false evidence appearing real, right? Predicting the worst, because if something better than that happens, I'll be happy, right? It's when I catastrophize. It's when I overestimate the danger and underestimate my ability to cope. Common phobias include fears in relation to health, finances, failure, growing old, death, loneliness, rejection, messing up, public speaking, flying, heights, snakes and spiders. They also include things such as what is now called FOMO, the fear of missing out, right? Or the fear of not being special, right? Not being looked at as somebody special. In my life, I've experienced a lot of fears. Roaches, cockroaches is one of mine. And maybe I'll talk about that some other time. Panic attacks and other irrational fears, the fear of public speaking, the fear of doing anything that might dishonor our recovery program, right? I want to represent this program the best I can, and I don't want to fall short of that. And somebody's going to criticize it after. I just know that. There's always the Ain't It Awful group that comes up, and says, that sucked, Whereas the Spirit of God does not produce negative fear. It's a kind of healthy fear, the fear of God. This does not mean frightened of God. In fact, it means the opposite. It's an understanding of who God is in relation to us. It means respect, reverence, awe, honor, adoration, and worship. It could even be translated as the love for God. It recognizes power, majesty, and holiness of God Almighty. It leads to a healthy respect of God and is the antidote to all other fears and phobias we experience in life. Fear God, and you need not fear anything else or anyone else. It's no coincidence that the fear or love of God has decreased in our society. All other fears have increased. We need to return right to our right relationship with God. Isn't that what this is all about? Returning to the right relationship with God if we wish to recover and be happy. That's my goal here, is to get as close to that relationship with God as I can. And I'm going to end with this because I think it's appropriate with 6 and 7. We are not who we are based on one day, one decision, one path, one relationship, or one choice, or one of anything else, because there are constantly opportunities to change if we don't stop knocking. Thanks for letting me be here tonight.